indie left. What is happening here?
To check out IndependentLeft.news.
The Indie News Network.
Indie Left News.
Oh, hey, Indie Left.
IndependentLeft.news. Great work.
Indie Left News.
IndependentLeft.news.
Independent Left News.
Shout out to Independent Left News. Shout out.
Oh, what's up, Independent Left?
Friend show.
Thank you, IndependentLeft.news.
INN, Indie, you're wonderful.
I think Indie was onto something.
Independent News Network, Indie News.
Yeah. What's up, Indie, over on Rockfin?
Independent News Network, also known as INN.
Indie Left News.
I don't know if I would have made it through that 3 weeks without Indie, honestly.
No, I was just going to ask Indie.
A huge thank you and shout out to Indie Left.
No, you know what we're doing? We're world building, Indie.
Indie Left News.
You were doing the INN recruiting.
Indie News.
Independent Left News.
Shout out to Independent Left News.
Check out Independent Left News.
At Indie News.
I see Indies in the chat. Hi, Indy. Okay, great.
Who are these people?
All right. We're doing this? Okay, we're really doing this. Okay, this is How Do We Miss That, episode 115, take 2. I'm Indy. Obviously, This guy here. That's Reef over there. We've been trying to do this episode for a little while now. We tried a couple times on Sunday night there he is, the shy guy. To no success, thanks to my crappy internet company. So we're going to pre-record this. We're going to put the segments out, and we will do, we'll put this out as a live stream sometime soon. So we were talking about some articles, some paid articles that I had brought from Matt Taibbi's Racket News. He's kind of gotten back into the Twitter files a little bit with Michael Schellenberger, and then they created something called the Censorship files, where, and you'll learn about this in a minute, they've partnered with another organization to do a bunch of FOIA requests and reverse engineer the Twitter files from public records and what documents we can get from Freedom of Information Act requests, FOIA requests. So we got it. So this guy, Matt Taibbi, 2023 Indie Media Award honoree, as is Racket News. Top journalist, top outlet, top everything. And we're going to have a video here from Orf soon he's also a top video producer. But he starts off by saying this is again a paid article. So please go subscribe to Racket News if you can. I'm sharing this because I think a lot more people should be seeing this than just the paid subscribers. And I am a paid subscriber, so I feel like as someone who paid, I can share this. He wants to introduce... Whatever. That's right. Whatever. Introducing the censorship files. What you can expect to find in Racket's FOIA library opening today. Why we targeted publicly funded anti-disinformation programs, which are, of course, misnamed. Last June, in the Washington Post, University of Washington academic Kate Starbird, and again, remember that name, Kate Starbird, complained that outside queries about work in the anti-disinformation field were taking a toll.
Sounds like Kirkland brand Star Fox Adventures. The Starbird Adventures.
Quote, the political part is intimidating. To have people with a lot of power in this world making false claims and false accusations about our work. And that's what she said about her, quote, nestled between plaintive photo portraits. Right now, there's a lot of bad actors who are using freedom of information requests to harass academics working at public universities, added Alice Marwick of the University of North Carolina. And that wasn't something we saw until a few years ago. Well, there's a reason why. All right. Whoa. Oh, boy. I just did something. I switched scenes. Now I know what I did. So these are some of the key players that are involved. You know Katie Couric in the top left. Kate Starbird, who I just mentioned, is in the top right corner.
Starbird.
Clint Watts. Clint Watts, we're going to talk about him quite a bit. He's from your favorite agency, Hamilton 68. And then And then Nina Jankowicz, who famously is the singing censor, the crazy person that was going to be the disinformation czar for the Biden administration. So what's going on here? In the last year, newspapers, magazines, and even broadcast programs like 60 Minutes have been aggressively arguing that civic-minded anti-disinformation researchers are suffering under assault by outside investigators who misuse tools like congressional subpoenas and the Freedom of Information Act, oh God, I struggle with that, to slow or halt their crucial work. The bad actors, quote unquote, are almost always described as right-wing activists, conservatives, Trump's allies, and so on, who attack beleaguered protectors of informational realm out of bias and bad faith. Bullshit.
Do these hands make you look right-wing?
Well, oh, dude, I wish I had the clip from Misha. We got to put that in, maybe. So, but bullshit. These are publicly funded researchers who spent years developing tools for suppressing or de-amplifying the speech of the very people paying their salaries. Taxpayers shouldn't have to use FOIA to find out what these programs do or how they're funded, but a look under the hood makes clear why they want things that way. First of all, Kate Starbird replied at length to queries about these documents. She had an overall comment, quote, "Our team has fielded dozens of public requests. We talked about that, producing thousands of emails. Not one confirms the central claims of your thesis, falsely alleging coordination with government and platforms to censor social media content, except everything that he's already published." But instead of acknowledging that fact, the abuse continues of the Washington State Public Records Law to smear and spread falsehoods based on willful misreadings of innocuous emails and ignorance about scientific research, and in several cases, a lack of reading comprehension. Okay, Karen, I can literally I can hear like the entitlement, and she's about to ask to see his manager. Since the Twitter files, Racket, in conjunction with Undead FOIA, has sent out hundreds of Freedom of Information requests to publicly funded anti-disinformation programs across the country. The full productions are printed here, and you may decide what is and what is not taken out of context. But here's just a short list of what you may find in the 2 batches of FOIA productions pertaining to Starbird's University of Washington. We've got an email suggesting that veterans and elders and residents of rural communities traffic in disinformation and are participating in that demonization of historically underrepresented communities. Okay. There is also a proposal for 4 to 5 EIP-like collaborations for monitoring content for upcoming elections, including election 2024. Now, what's EIP? That is the Election Integrity Partnership that all of these clowns were part of that ended up suppressing, among other things, the Hunter Biden laptop as it was released because they pre-gamed and pre-bunked it, quote unquote, for right. They pre-bunked it for the social media companies. That's been that word's been coming up quite a bit, and it will come up in these today too. Hey, phrasing. Yeah, but there's also a bitter letter of resignation from a major anti-disinformation commission by a celebrity born in the Soviet Union, saying the group's work reminds me of home, quote unquote. Now,
a little bit of Russiagating in there.
A little bit. Well, yes and no. It's not Russiagating because that's Garry Kasparov. He was a Soviet-born chess champion who had to petition the Soviet Union to travel worldwide. He literally lived under, the communist regime as we were sold it. And he definitely has...
Jimmy lit him up, if I remember correctly.
I seem to recall that, too. And I actually listened to that Garry Kasparov article today as I was in the shower, but that was really interesting. If you're a subscriber, that's also a paid article. So there's also a letter from the organizer of the infamous Hamilton 68 scheme saying that the new administration had asked him to bring together anti-disinformation experts for a tabletop session. These fuckers love their tabletop sessions with members of the National Security Council.
I mean, they spend a lot on Warhammers, and they got to get their tabletop game, right?
Well, they do get a free. They do get free lunch with it too. They don't have to buy lunch those days because I think lunch is provided. But
okay.
But who's at this tabletop session? Members of the National Security Council to develop strategies for countering disinformation with the guy from the NGO Hamilton 68 dashboard on behalf of the administration. But no, there's no meshing of government and private entity here.
No.
And then there's also a letter from Starboard saying, quote, "We don't have a lot of evidence about what works," adding that there is little to suggest that tactics like labeling, pre-bunking, there's that word again, media literacy training, or otherwise leveraging digital pathways can change minds. Listen to all of the fucking terminology. These people have their own language. You'll find her comment about the letter in an upcoming article. Yeah, all of that language is censorship, labeling, pre-bunking, media literacy training, leveraging digital.
Why can I never
pathways.
Remember that? The 1984 language.
INCSOC.
That's it.
These are items from just 2 Racket FOIA productions. Requests were sent in hopes of better understanding where the money from federal agencies like GEC was being spent. We found some awards, like a $417,000 GEC grant to Arizona State University that the school has yet to explain, for example. But mostly documents show a broad intermingling of academia, platforms, and federal agencies to address the problem of inconvenient speech. There is no such academic discipline as disinformation studies, or worse, critical disinformation studies. There do not exist
underwater basket weaving class.
It's worse. There do not exist experts who've been trained to determine what is and is not a fact across a global set of all things, from epidemiology to voting machine mechanics to war in Ukraine or Gaza to J6 or Hunter Biden's laptop. Except for us. We covered every single one of those things, and we were on the right side of all of them, by the way, Matt. The idea that there can be such a discipline is absurd, and the central fraud of a gigantic new source of government waste, which is also part of the problem, and also part of their idea. These are not anti-disinformation programs, they're censorship technology programs and should be identified as such. What universities, federal agencies, and civil society groups are doing when claiming to research disinformation is developing methods for analysis, detection, and suppression of politically inconvenient content. The tell that this is their real purpose is that political orthodoxy can be managed by machine, but of course, truth in the philosophical sense, or even truth in the far lesser journalistic sense, cannot. Yeah, that's breaking that down a little bit. Okay. Yeah, how can political orthodoxy be managed by machine, but truth can't be? Like, it's inconsistent. He's saying a panel of the world's best journalists would struggle to quickly determine whether or not a vaccine is safe and effective, but an agency like the CDC can easily decide its official vaccine policy. Yeah, as long as they're not paid for by Pfizer. Citizens might look at issues from many angles and argue over causes and responses, but the Departments of State and Defense or the White House can come to unified responses quickly and even more easily identify speech they don't like. Because of the First Amendment, they can't clean out that content themselves, but federally funded middlemen organizations still can, at least for the moment, which is what's going on here. Federally subsidized programs judge speech not by accuracy, but by political impact. Even small truths might be judged to have large potential for harm. Truths, like Utes. Truths. Researchers in these documents are shown to be reluctant to allow even true stories about, say, hiccups or small incidents in the vaccination process that might be taken out of context. Safe and effective, folks. Remember, safe and effective. I told that joke. I told that Jimmy Dore joke to. I had a physical this week, and I told that Jimmy Dore joke to my doctor about how my heart swells with pride every time I think of it. He cracked up. He goes, "I'm going to use that from now on." I said, "Well, then you got to credit Jimmy Dore." This is the difference between truth and political truth. The former is elusive, and there should never be a government department charged with its determination. Otherwise, we're heading towards INGSOC. You will read an insider's assessment that doing so sounds like a Soviet concept. We're not going to read that tonight. It is, and that's how people should understand these documents. Censorship files. So part one was next. I skipped part one because I think that there's more important stuff. I'm going to stop right here real quick. And I'm going to ask you all to help out INN. There has been and is a QR code up there. That is to support our friend Jett. Oh, look at that. It's still showing 50%. Wait, we need to fix that because we had something happen.
Refresh it.
I sure do. Let's go give that a refresh right now because people need to see where are the Ko-fi stream alerts, INN. No, that's not it. Ko-fi goal overlay, INN. Browser to refresh. Oh no, we are at 50%. I'm sorry. Because I reset it and I raised it up to $2,000. But last night on INN News, we got to $1,000, which was our first goal to get Jesse a new computer. We reached it and we love everybody and we appreciate everybody helping us get there. The people that are on this list are some of the people that helped do that. Oh, actually, everyone that contributed to that is on this list. There are others that have donated to the channel as well, and we wanted to thank and acknowledge them. If you do want to donate or to support us, we have the QR code up there, and that's to go to Ko-fi, which then goes to PayPal. We also have a Patreon subscription monthly, Substack, where you can subscribe monthly, or you can donate one time on Rumble, or the best is Cash App. That is fee-free, that gets the money into Indy's hands right away and helps the network today. So if you can do Cash App, cash.app/$Indie News Network, that's always awesome. Otherwise, please support Jesse with the QR code. We really appreciate you doing that. All right. Next portion of the story and the next article from Taibbi that is also a paid article also includes a very short video from our friend Matt Orfala, who's also an Indie Media Award honoree, top video creator, Racket News, Indie Media Award honoree, written by Matt Taibbi and Undead Foya. The Censorship Files, again, going back to Kate Starbird's quote, we have very little evidence about what works. But before that, let's watch this little short 14-second video, and hopefully it's not muted. It's not. From Orf.
You and your team, you guys created a website, Hamilton 68.
Yes, my colleagues and I, we tracked Russian accounts.
That's some bullshit.
So there, literally right now, there are Russian bots, according to your website, that are putting this out into the world. Is that correct?
That's bull.
Right? So, that's Orf. And we go into the story that on April 11th, 2021, the University of Washington's Kate Starbird sent a letter to former FBI agent Clint Watts, that's the guy who was on that video right there, whom Racket readers will recognize as the face of the ill-fated Hamilton 68 dashboard. Funded by the Alliance for Security and Democracy, whose board contains former heads and deputy heads of agencies like CIA, NSA, DHS. Nothing to worry about there. Hamilton 68 spawned hundreds of incorrect stories about alleged Russian bot activity. In the Twitter files, we found executives reverse engineered the dashboard, quote unquote. It's not even a dashboard. It's really just a list of Twitter accounts discovered it was full of people unconnected to Russia, and argued that it should be called out for the quote-unquote bullshit that it is, but they didn't. Watts, in early April 2021, had invited Starboard to join a societal resilience roundtable after being asked by the new administration to gather a special group of experts for an off-the-record roundtable. Like I said, these guys love their roundtables and their tabletop discussions. Here's the email. All right. And there's the reference to societal resilience to disinformation. It's only a few days away. I believe your work and knowledge is particularly relevant and insightful to this discussion. Garbage. Later, Watts then added that the roundtable would also include several members of the National Security Council. We mentioned that earlier in our intro. It says, they're working on strategies for countering disinformation and strengthening resiliency on the session next Monday. Still waiting on a few to answer the invitation, and we'll add them. God only knows how many there were in total. Right? Here we go. He then asks participants to compile any references for talking points so their National Security Council guests can read them ahead of the meeting. Give me the cliff notes in advance. Right? Starboard responds with a list of replies, amusingly suggesting that the idea of a disinformation czar would be seen as partisan and ineffective. Note the date on the email. The Disinformation Governance Board, featuring singing censor Nina Jankowicz, would be launched a year later on April 27, 2022. And despite the efforts, I can't believe they did it, despite efforts to frame the idea as a sensible one, okay, that it's going to tackle Russia and migrant smugglers, announced the AP. It was shut down shortly after amid catcalls and accusations that the Biden administration was trying to establish a ministry of truth. Just like Harry Potter, they had a ministry of truth.
Scum!
Yeah. They had a ministry of truth, I believe, in Harry Potter stories.
Yep.
Right? This part's duplicated. Starboard, who had no comment about the Disinformation Governance Board lie, went on, responding to the proposed question, what do we still not know? Well, she answered, we have very little evidence about what works to help people be more resistant to disinformation. She at least admits that platform labels seem to work in very narrow cases only, right, and could be harmful elsewhere. Yeah, like for RT contributors, but it was intentionally harmful elsewhere. So it's funny how she says that it seems to work in some cases. So I would guess that that's censoring the speech that they find inconvenient.
Yeah, that narrow case was like Fiorella. That's what that was. Like, it was sometimes it could get people, you know, but
right, but harmful elsewhere, like Garland Nixon, who also had a label put on his account for a while, though he only worked for an American company. Sputnik Radio is an American company.
Well, or something like the BBC or any of those other publications that are government funded.
Right.
You know, like that would be an issue.
Right. So
it could be harmful elsewhere. Yeah.
So Matt wants to note that these thoughts about the lack of evidence were being conveyed after the Election Integrity Partnership, which I mentioned earlier, to which Starboard Center at the UW had been a partner. Twitter files showed the company often applied labels in response to EIP flags. So Starboard added that the benefits of pre-bunking were also unclear, and the same went for media literacy training. That didn't mean that they were against it. They were just saying it was unclear.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So here's to Clint from Kate, April 11th, ahead of the meeting. What should we do? Collaborative work to rapidly identify, track, and even reveal the trajectories of disinformation. Work with journalists to help them report on mis- and disinformation to reach broader audiences. You mean plant your own disinformation with popular journalists so that they can muddy the waters about the actual information that was inconvenient to what you didn't want put out there. Ideally branching out beyond big outlets to local journalists. So they want to infect everybody. We want to work with community partners and targeted communities to help build resilience too. But what should we try not to do? Right? What are there interventions that have been tried but have shown not to be as effective? What lessons can we learn? Anything that makes the work of disinformation appear to be partisan, like a disinformation czar in the Biden administration, would be bad, is what she's saying there. 2021. They did it a year later, even though she's suggesting it as something that you shouldn't do. Just the mere suggestion, right? Again, this is further in her email saying that we have very little evidence about what works to help everyday people be better at identifying and being resistant to disinformation. And here are some of those things. And then the last thing he's going to talk about is this de-radicalization. Digital pathways that lead down the rabbit hole aren't so easily leveraged to bring people back again. You mean to unknow what they then find out because they went down said rabbit hole and found out a bunch of shit about what our government was doing and can't now unknow it?
Yeah, like straight up fucking Clockwork Orange shit.
Aha. Okay. Yeah, that sounds perfectly normal. Starboard ultimately concluded.
Some eyelids open.
As he says, Starboard ultimately concluded the digital pathways that lead down the rabbit hole aren't so easily leveraged to bring people back again. As I just said, it may appear that she's saying that it doesn't seem like any of the things people like me do actually work, but that's not the case, she says now. In that passage, she says, I'm articulating the current state of the field, concerns about some of the strategies being employed to address the problem, and open questions that remain. And then she adds, oh my God, listen to this caroning. Contrary to what's suggested in your assertion, open questions with a challenging problem space don't condemn the anti-disinformation project. They are part of scientific inquiry and suggest more reason to engage in research, not less. So, what? This woman's giving me a headache. How she gets involved in all this? Well, she's saying the line that everybody wants her to say and wants to hear. So she continues to get elevated and promoted and amplified, even though it's completely wrong, or it's bunk science, as she's even admitting. She added that, quote, since the date of the email, scientists have made progress on identifying what researchers call interventions that can reduce the spread of harmful false claims, including, I love this, accuracy nudges, whatever that means, media literacy training, lateral reading instruction, and more. Again, their own entire language to describe how they want to censor everybody else's speech. So they've made progress since then. Watts, of course, declined to comment because what's he going to say? Starboard, complaining of cherry-picked emails, apologized on the email chain to Watts for causing him trouble. He didn't. Our FOIA request contained his name, which was why we got this correspondence. I noted that Watts, via Hamilton 68, was himself responsible for many incorrect news stories. The Washington Post alone issued 8 corrections resulting from analysis from the Hamilton 68 dashboard. And then asked Starboard why this brand of disinformation, right, which reaches papers like the Post, the Washington Post, and the New York Times, isn't more concerning than sites she focuses on, like Gateway Pundit and Occupy Democrats. She focuses on the more partisan side. So we know that basically she's a shit lib. Occupy Democrats, even like liberals, think that Occupy Democrats is extremist leftists because they're incredibly in the tank for Democrats. It's gross how much they are. But those aren't leftists. Those are corporatists. Those are apologists. All right. Gateway Pundit, I mean, not a left-wing site for sure by any means. Again, we know from other correspondents that Starboard pays attention to episodes like Hamilton 68, whose dashboard was designed by New Knowledge CEO Jonathan Morgan in conjunction with GEC contractor J.M. Berger. This matters. Why? Because back in 2018, just after New Knowledge was caught in a crazy scheme to create, ready for this, fake Russian Twitter accounts and have them follow Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore, they hired these guys again. Like, Starboard then wrote future Graphica chief Ben Nimmo, and Graphica is another one of these Hamilton 68 style NGO, but government entwined agencies. And Ben Nimmo used to be the chief of information or some kind of a high up spot at Meta, Facebook. Ben. All right. One topic, again, considering yesterday's news about New Knowledge and the Alabama project, is to discuss ethics and boundaries between research, perhaps different kinds of research, and different kinds of action in this space. Just an idea. And here's where she's suggesting getting aggressive. I don't understand why they blocked out Ben Nimmo's Facebook email address, because that's probably either at Meta or at Facebook.com. Really weird. I'm guessing that there were other people also named and included in CC that he decided to redact. The research director at New Knowledge, by the way, during the period of both the Alabama and Hamilton 68 episodes, was one Renee DiResta. We've talked about Renee DiResta before. Nimmo's Graphica and Starboard's Center for an Informed Public would both go on to team up with DiResta in the 2020 Election Integrity Partnership. Apparently, that discussion of boundaries of ethics involving offensive information operations didn't judge the latter too harshly. I am not a fan of Renee DiResta. Let's just start off by saying that right now. Here's the proof showing that the Stanford Internet Observatory, Graphica, the FR Lab, and the University of Washington's Center for an Informed Public were partnered together on this. Kate's response was indignant. Of course it was. Saying that this exchange took place before I knew Renee, but Renee is a brilliant researcher. In 4 years of collaborating, I've never seen her do anything that can be classified as unethical. Obviously, you weren't looking too close. No. But for the full set of UW emails, please visit the FOIA library, which is in the post, which you have to be a paid subscriber to be able to access. So please subscribe and support Matt and Racket News. Why is my thing jumping around on me? I don't know. But while you're supporting Racket News, you can also drop a support over on INN. Just switch over here so we're not just doing this on one screen. Hey, hi, everybody. Oh, goodness. Reef's face is covered with that QR code. That's not cool. Let's fix that. All right. Now we're good. Yeah, it's censorship. What a country. What a topic. Like, and this is all happening, again, with our money, and they're worried about misinformation. You know, the call's coming from inside the house, guys. It's coming from the government. It's coming from the intelligence agencies that are funding the misinformation apparatus that masks what the intelligence agencies are doing. And it's being done and funded by cutouts like In-Q-Tel, and we're going to talk about In-Q-Tel in a couple of minutes. All right. There is one more Censorship Files article, and it also involves the EIP, where they said that they will not be intimidated from continuing their mission in 2024. And this is, again, a Matt Taibbi article, paid, Racket News. This was at Stanford University. So support independent media by all means. Support Racket. Support INN. We're user funded. Now, Matt says, first, this is not the story I referenced about plans for souped-up AI-themed versions of the Stanford-run DHS and DOS partnered election integrity partnership heading into the 24 election. That's still to come, and part of a separate series in collaboration with Public. The following documents do, however, show that participants in the election integrity partnership plan to continue and expand their program into 2024 and beyond. Wait, what? Yeah. In this note from September 2022, former Facebook executive and Stanford Internet Observatory head Alex Stamos writes a note of encouragement to the other core members of the EIP. Despite some recent attention from right-wing media, he's literally talking about Taibbi, the EIP will not be intimidated from continuing our mission in 2022 and 2024. What does he mean? Again, this is from public records, from Kate Starbird's email, because it's an EDU that at a government-funded research thing. Same thing with Stanford Internet Observatory.
Right.
Earlier that same year, EIP participants received a note from Maria Bianchi Buck of the Pew-funded Election Trust Initiative asking about plans for the upcoming year. Would EIP be up and running again? How much was it receiving from the Newmark Foundation and the National Science Foundation? And are you still pursuing funding from the DHS and other federal sources? Regarding the latter, were there reasons such that that funding might be undesirable? That's a weird kind of email from a election trust initiative person. I guess she's just kind of trying to follow up and see how much company she's going to have in the disinformation space for the upcoming elections. But Starbird, who sat on a DHS advisory committee, replied that, quote, outside of the National Science Foundation, which is a primary funding agency for research in my field of human-computer interaction and has funded my research since I was a University of Colorado grad student, my team has not applied for federal funding for our rapid response work. I made it clear to my collaborators and potential funders that my UW team would not request nor accept funding from DHS or other federal agencies that do this work, or to do this work. Now, she says that, but her agency, but they'll certainly accept it from a third party that's paid off by them. The DHS had a significant role in the election integrity partnership that UW worked on as a core partner. Twitter files describe executives saying, quote, DHS want to establish a centralized portal for reporting disinformation, unquote, while the White House Weaponization Committee found an email from an Atlantic Council participant noting, oh my goodness, we just set up an election integrity partnership at the behest of DHS/CISA. That's bad. One of the main EIP partners, the Center for Internet Security, was also significantly funded by the DHS. So again, she's saying here, we would not request or accept funding from DHS, but they're getting stuff from CISA, or from CIS, not CISA, but CIS, which is funded by the DHS. Starbird, meanwhile, wrote to DiResta at Stanford, Renee DiResta, who we don't like, and her UW team about submitting a proposal to the National Science Foundation about hoping to implement and evaluate, like we saw earlier, 4 to 5 additional EIP-like collaborations for Election 22, Election 24, and other emergent crisis/breaking events, like the next pandemic, quote-unquote, that they keep predicting. Safe and effective, safe and effective. My heart swells with pride. The email even comes with a helpful timeline showing plans for a full-blown EIP-style response to both Election 2024 and a not-yet-defined emergent crisis event that would apparently occur in year 3 of their plan. That would be in last year into this year. So first half of last year, the last half of last year, first half of this year, potentially. Have we had an emergent crisis event? Well, we've had several, but I don't know if there are any that necessarily would warrant a full-blown election integrity partnership style response and, agency to be set up and study and everything else. But she says that her project was designed to produce innovative methods and evaluate collaborative frameworks for rapid response to harmful falsehoods around elections and crisis events. The work is ongoing. We've applied our frameworks to surfacing and helping to resolve rumors around the 2022 U.S. election. What do you mean? Limited to rumors about election processes and results, and to responding to rumors about a small number of crisis events. I don't like what they're talking about when it comes to this crisis events stuff, because that's like, as news breaks, something like Rafah massacre, like the Flower massacre is unfolding, they're talking about controlling the narrative. That's a crisis event as far as they're concerned. These communications are important because they show that key participants in the largest 2020 election content monitoring program, like Starboard, who told 60 Minutes that more information is spread by people that were supporters of Donald Trump or conservatives, at least at one time planned to rerun similar programs in 2022 and 2024. And again, for her full set of UW emails, please visit the FOIA library linked in the paid post. So Kate Starboard is not a friend of, I don't know who, of people who are online that are trying to question the election integrity process, potentially. I mean, how do you feel about all this, man?
Seems par for the course, honestly. We talked about Hamilton 69 a ton. Talked about, Jankowicz and all this stuff. I mean, I'm not surprised. All of it's connected to, think tanks that decided this might not be a good idea, but it's what our profit voters want. So,
yeah.
But,
yeah. What are the overlords? And it's really what the national security overlords, I think, more even than the profit people want, because that really drives and controls all of it. You see this slide up here? These are our supporters. We really appreciate all of them. If you are able, really appreciate you dropping us a couple of bucks. Also, again, support Racket News. These are paid subscriber articles. And guess what? We pay for that subscription from the money that you support us with as well. So, Patreon, Substack, Rumble, Cash App, best way to do it. And of course, down in the corner, you've got that QR code that can go to Ko-fi, and that will help fund Jesse Jett's new PC. We've reached our first $1,000 goal. Really appreciate everybody stepping up to help us do that. All right. We know this guy too. McLeod. I forgot that I brought this article. Oh, and this is a whopper too. Holy crap. All right.
Why do you go talking burger terms all the time?
What do you mean? Because burgers are life. Now, this article was earlier in May, but it slipped through most people's radar, I'm sure. From Proper Not to New Lines, How Washington is Weaponizing Media. So I thought this fit along with the Election Integrity Partnership, as well as with the CIA stuff that we're about to cover. But specifically here, what Alan does... Go ahead.
I've had it on the chopping block a few times, so I knew that it was too long.
It's a little too long, but it's not too long for the show, and we're going to cover it because I haven't done an Alan story in a while. Alan McLeod is an outstanding journalist. He is an Indie Media Award honoree, of course, as is Mint Press News, the outlet that he works and publishes for in this case. He's published for others, but Mint Press is great. Support Mint Press. Support independent media. We do all the time. All right, so what's going on with New Lines? New Lines Magazines purports to be an independent media organization. Now, you and I have been talking about this for a while, the quote-unquote corporate-funded independent media space. Yet it constantly attacks genuine alternative media who stray from Washington's official foreign policy line, all while employing many spooks, spies, and other figures at the heart of the national security state. Wow, it sounds like another version of Bellingcat. Sounds like another version of Bellingcat, honestly, in a way. But it's a magazine. Yep. Worse still, its parent organization, the New Lines Institute, has recently admitted to being directly funded by the U.S. government. Mint Press News takes a closer look at this shady organization acting as Washington's attack dog. And this is why I brought it, because again, the U.S. government funding this, and these are the people that are starting to now try to get involved in policing election integrity, or, you know, what is misinformation with regard to elections. If you read the Wikipedia entries for many alternative media outlets, they're written off as fringe conspiracy websites pushing debunked foreign propaganda. Mint Press News, for example, is described as a far-left news website which publishes disinformation and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Antiseptic. The Gray Zone is similarly smeared as a fringe blog known for its misleading reporting, and sympathetic coverage of authoritarian regimes such as Syria, Venezuela, and China. Oh, good timing there. The evidence for these evidence light smears comes primarily from the U.S. foreign policy journal New Lines magazine, a product of the New Lines Institute. New Lines is a very new organization that was established only in 2020. Despite this, it has already become a key player in setting U.S. agendas worldwide, boasting a staff of more than 50 and working with over 150 contributors. Headquartered on the prestigious Massachusetts Avenue Northwest, where there's some of the most expensive real estate in the world, it sits between foreign embassies and many of America's most prestigious think tanks, a stone's throw, both metaphorically and physically, from the White House. That's a little weird. How does an agency like that, an independent agency, get that kind of funding? New Lines describes its goal as seeking to shape U.S. foreign policy based on a deep understanding of regional geopolitics and value systems. It began by focusing solely on the Middle East, but quickly expanded to cover Ukraine, China, Venezuela, and other political hotspots that most concern hawks in Washington. I'm guessing Mexico would be in there somewhere too. It certainly shapes public debate, and its research and experts are regularly quoted in influential outlets like the New York Fuck You Times, the Washington Suck My Dick Post, and fake news CNN. By the way, those were out of Will Ferrell did a whole bit where he was George H.W. Bush, and that's what George W. Bush, and he referred to those two outlets as that. I didn't just make that up out of whole cloth. But so who's in this New Lines Institute? Well, according to Allen, it's a rogues gallery of U.S. officials. Of course. New Lines presents itself as an independent organization, claiming that it is one of the few think tanks in Washington with no foreign or local agendas. Yet its higher ranks are packed with former state officials. This sounds almost like the Hudson Institute reinvented.
Yep.
Chief amongst them is New Lines Institute and founder and president Ahmed Alwani. Alwani served on the advisory board of the U.S. military's Africa Command and influenced Washington's Middle East positions.
I knew I recognized that name.
Yep. His New Lines biography boasts that he met the commanding generals of Fort Jackson, Fort Hood, Fort Bragg, Naval Station Norfolk, and Joint Base Andrews, as well as then Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld and his staff numerous times during the Iraq War to consult on U.S. policy, something that many might not consider a badge of honor. Alwani also founded Fairfax University, a controversial private educational institution that Virginia state regulators considered shutting down in 2019. Auditors found that teachers weren't qualified to teach their assigned courses, academic quality was patently deficient, plagiarism was rampant, and students' English levels were abysmally poor, making Fairfax look like more a degree mill than a legitimate university. Trump University reincarnated anyone? New Line Senior Director Faisal Itani has a similar notable past. Before joining the organization, Itani was simultaneously a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, which is a NATO think tank that serves the brains of the military alliance, but also an adjunct professor of security. Oh, I missed something somewhere. Somewhere. Other key New Line staff members with similar pasts include Tashi Kogyal, who served in the Obama administration at the Department of Justice, and as a special assistant to the administrator of USAID, an organization that has overseen a host of foreign regime change operations. They seem to like the color revolutions themselves. Then you've got Kamran Bokhari. He's formerly the Central Asia Studies course coordinator at the State Department's Foreign Service Institute. You've got Tanya Domi, who's a 15-year U.S. Army veteran who also served at the State Department as a spokesperson and counsel for multiple American ambassadors to Bosnia and Herzegovina. Jeez, this roster is insane. Tommy Palacios, currently employed by the U.S. Military Academy as a counterterrorism research fellow. And then you've got Michael Weiss, a non-resident senior research fellow at, again, NATO's Atlantic Council. But none of these people has any foreign policy agenda whatsoever, right?
Nope.
When it comes to attacking alternative media, Weiss in particular has a notable past. In late 2016, an anonymous organization called Prop or Not published a list of some 200 websites that it classified as routine peddlers of Russian disinformation. I would guess that many of those are
Russian scum.
Many of those, by the way, are Indie Media Award honorees. Many leading alternative media outlets were smeared on that list, including Mid-Press News, WikiLeaks, Truth Out, Truth Dig, which doesn't exist anymore, Naked Capitalism, and antiwar.com. So yes, you've got three right there named, plus the, of course, WikiLeaks. Never had to retract the story. The charges were false, but the effect was staggering. The Prop or Not list went viral, posted by mainstream outlets such as the Washington Post, which insinuated that a massive Kremlin-controlled propaganda network was responsible for Donald Trump's electoral victory. We're still hearing Russiagate. Google, Facebook, and other prominent social media platforms subsequently changed their algorithms to punish the outlets on the list and promote authoritative content like the Washington Post or Fox News. Mid-Press News lost more than 90% of its Google search traffic almost overnight, never to return. It was later revealed that Prop or Not was likely Weiss's brainchild, meaning that the hysteria over foreign government interference in our media was probably a domestic government-funded operation.
This is not the other Weiss that called people Assad code or whatever. Right?
Not Barry Weiss, no.
Not the same one.
No, this is Michael Weiss.
Sure.
And this is also not the Philip Weiss from Mondo Weiss, obviously. I'll bet Mondo Weiss was probably on that list also.
There's a relation.
A number of other key New Line staff also previously worked at Stratfor, which is an organization often referred to as the Shadow CIA, a private group carrying out intelligence gathering on behalf of the U.S. government. Now, Perhaps the most notable New Lines Institute employee, however, is non-resident fellow Elizabeth Zirkov. Zirkov is a Russian-born Israeli who, before joining New Lines, worked at a number of hawkish think tanks, including the Atlantic Council and Freedom House. She grew up in Israel and served for many years in the Israeli military intelligence, including during Israel's 2006 invasion of Lebanon. She also worked directly for former Israeli Minister of Interior and Deputy Prime Minister Natan Sharansky. In 2015, she published a photo of her at the Pentagon claiming she was on a special mission accompanied by the State Department. So there's definitely a close partnership there. Zirkov was an obscure figure who only came to international attention in 2023 when she was arrested in Baghdad carrying out what authorities described as a spying mission. The news media made worldwide headlines, with many official figures in the West leaping to her defense, describing the charges as ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And a man in my position cannot be afforded to be made to look ridiculous. That's for The Godfather. It transpired that she had concealed her identity, entering Iraq on a Russian passport, and then presented herself as a Russian researcher and a supporter of Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, when she obviously was not. A 2022 video interview shows Zirkov in Baghdad dressed in a khimar, a modest black dress and head covering. Quote, "It's clear that Muqtada al-Sadr is a patriotic figure who rejects intervention from any country, whether in the West or the East. In my opinion, this should be the position of every Iraqi political leader," she says, adding that the U.S. is an oppressor nation. She's playing a very, very dangerous role. This is a blatant deception, given that she is a former Israeli intelligence officer who has worked for NATO's think tank. In fact, Zirkov has long taken hostile anti-Shia positions, supported Sunni militias in Syria, and championed U.S. military intervention in the region. Yeah, somebody you would totally want to be in line with, right? For years, she was one of the most outspoken Syria regime change hawks online, downplaying the U.S.-backed moderate rebels' connections to al-Qaeda, and even promoting the Gay Girl in Damascus blog, an online personality purporting to be a Syrian opposition organizer that was later unmasked as a pro-regime change hoax run by an American student at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. Wow.
We covered a bit of this in another story from Interest that Kit Clarenberg put out about Palestinian refugees and how they're used and funneled into these organizations put up by think tanks and British intelligence. So, more of the same, sounds like.
Zirkov initially claimed that she was in Iraq to conduct academic research for Princeton University. Here's the problem. This was also the position taken by the Israeli government, whose laws prohibit its citizens from even traveling to Iraq without special dispensation. Well, she's an academic who visited Iraq on her Russian passport, her own initiative, pursuant to work on her doctorate and academic research on behalf of Princeton University in the U.S., stated the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. She literally has Bibi speaking out for her, but of course, ready for this one? Princeton, however, categorically denied that it had allowed her to go to Iraq on university business.
Okay.
So wait a minute. Let's back this up a minute. She's caught in Iraq using a Russian passport. She's been saying here, and she's aligning with Shia, with Sunni and anti-Shia stuff, but she goes over there and parrots a completely opposite line, says that she's on a research project for Princeton, but Princeton says she's not there for her. She's a former Mossad intelligence agents officer or military intelligence officer who has Bibi literally speaking out on her behalf, yeah, that's totally not fucking shady.
Yeah.
As Alan says, thus very little of her story. What's that?
These groups do stuff like these groups do stuff like build fucking coffee shops and like funnel young people into, school organizations and stuff like that. So, we've heard first-hand accounts of that in our space as well, where that's how they're recruiting people.
Yep.
Thus,
very little about her story makes any sense, of course, leading many to conclude that Iraqi authorities were correct in their assessment of Surkov. Adding weight to their story is the complete radio silence from New Lines since her arrest and imprisonment. In more than 1 year, neither the New Lines Institute nor its magazine has released so much as a sentence addressing the detention of one of the Institute's more senior staff members. Okay, that's weird. In a video released in November, Surkov stated that she was actually in Iraq on behalf of the CIA and Israeli intelligence outfit Mossad. Her goals were to foment intra-Shia division and strife to organize and support anti-corruption protests. So wait, she was trying to basically push color revolution. Huh, I didn't think the CIA did that. She also said that she
do that everywhere.
Oh, right,
Name
right.
them after flowers and all sorts of stuff.
She also said that she traveled to Syria to build ties between Israel and the Sunni Syrian opposition forces. Given that she had been detained for over half a year by this point, it's not clear if she was coerced into confessing. That's possible. Look, she could have been tortured into giving that confession. Now, studying their output, it is clear that New Lines has two principal targets: nations that the U.S. has deemed enemy states, and alternative media outlets that question the narratives that New Lines and the U.S. government are trying to establish. Ding, 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 that's us here too. Indeed, New Lines has spent years investigating alternative media, promoting a narrative that opposition to U.S. foreign policy equals being in the pay of enemy foreign countries. A 2022 article titled, quote, "How the Pro-Putin West is Coping with Russian Defeat in Ukraine," unquote, presented journalists such as Max Blumenthal and Michael Tracy, as well as renowned academic Professor Noam Chomsky as Kremlin advisors, and claimed that Ukraine's lightning counteroffensive and the rapid territorial advances had left Russia defeated. News of this defeat will no doubt surprise many reading in 2024. But this sort of disinformation about disinformation has become a common method of attacking and smearing anti-war voices. Another article describes what it calls an echo chamber of Syria conspiracy theorists. It mentions Mint Press and a host of the other alternative media outlets, including Indie Media Award honoree Consortium News, Project Censored, Free Speech TV, Media Roots, the now defunct but also Indie Media Award-winning Shadowproof, Indie Media Award-winning Gray Zone, Indie Media Award-winning Truth Out, Indie Media Award-winning Common Dreams, and of course Indie Media Award-winning Antiwar.com. New Lines again attacked Mint Press News for our coverage of Latin America, claiming that we backed leftist dictatorships by looking the other way as they crushed protests. The report appeared particularly annoyed that we did not support the 2021 Cuban protests, a movement that it lionized as an anti-racist uprising led by the local hip-hop community. Mint Press showed that the Cuban demonstrations were led by artists funded, trained, and supported by the National Endowment for Democracy and U.S. Aid, which are part of the same network that funds New Lines and are directly tied to the CIA and to Homeland Security. We know this.
Well, I've been in the office and I've not seen any.
Oh, right. That's right. The Gray Zone had that conversation with the woman from the USAID who denied anything and played stupid. Groups like the DSA and the Center for Economic and Policy Research, as well as journalist Ben Norton and author and public intellectual Vijay Prashad, were also singled out for their support for anti-imperial governments in Latin America. Lucy from Blue Moon Red Wine would have a whole different issue with Ben Norton. We have plenty of issues with DSA. We think that actually they are aligned with the Democratic Party way too much because Democrats don't represent anything having to do with socialism. And trying to thread that needle is a joke. All right. State-funded media. Considering its output, its constant support for U.S. policy and attacks on both domestic and international opponents of Washington, speculation was rife that the U.S. government was secretly funding New Lines. But the Institute had always denied this, presenting itself as a neutral, agenda-free organization. Sure. That was at least until late last year when it announced that it had reached a cooperative agreement with the Modern War Institute at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point to jointly develop actionable recommendations for U.S. global leadership to address pressing global security challenges. That certainly does not sound like unbiased. In other words, to plan out American military strategy. The New Lines Institute also noted that they would now serve as an intellectual resource for solving military problems. As if they hadn't been doing this the whole time. Now they just went public about it. Days later, New Lines' About Us section was updated, removing all reference to being funded by the Fairfax Foundation and inserting a clause admitting U.S. government financial support, strongly suggesting that the military is now bankrolling it. It now reads, emphasis added, funding for the New Lines Institute is provided by the Washington Institute for Education and Research, a 501c3 nonprofit organization registered in Washington, D.C. The other paragraph, well, here's the other one. New Lines Institute accepts research grants and charitable donations from U.S. individuals, registered U.S. legal entities, and the U.S. government in support of its research priorities, and only insofar as such support is in compliance with U.S. laws and regulations, aligns with the Institute's vision, mission, purpose, and principles, and falls within its core areas of expertise, namely intelligence, global threats, military, and murdering brown people worldwide. Yeah. The news did not come as a shock to those paying close attention. It will come as a surprise to no one that New Lines is funded by the U.S. government, wrote investigative journalist Matt Kennard, also Indie Media Award honoree from Declassified UK, on Twitter. There is a certain tenor to the articles of these cutouts that is instantly recognizable, slightly critical to be convincing, but only up to a point which leaves state narratives robust. Others were even more scathing. Here's Aaron Mate. Oh, Aaron Mate. Congrats to New Lines on their collaboration with the Modern War Institute at West Point Military Academy, he quipped. A good reminder that people who smear Gray Zone and other independent journalists as state-funded are often projecting.
You done messed up, Aaron!
That's the buzzsaw right there. With their quiet admission of U.S. government funding, New Lines joins an ever-growing list of organizations like Graphica, we mentioned Ben Nimmo's organization earlier, and Bellingcat, fuck those guys,
Bellingcrap,
that present themselves as independent but are funded by the U.S. government, or British government, or both. Former U.S. state and intelligence officials staff them and dutifully report U.S. government narratives and talking points, and then claim that they're independent. Through their reports and studies, groups like New Lines launder Washington's narratives into the public domain, smuggled in under the guise of objectivity. Worse still, New Lines has been at the forefront of attacking and demonizing the few dissenting voices left in American society, like us, but nobody knows about us yet. Watch out, motherfuckers. Their reports being used to further marginalize alternative media, the only place where serious domestic critique of U.S. foreign policy can occur. It is therefore doubly crucial that organizations like New Lines are understood for precisely what they are, the State Department's attack dogs. Alan is outstanding, and he always brings receipts. He brings backgrounds. Gotta love him. If you appreciate the stories we select, if you like shows like this and want to support independent networks that are user-funded, there are several ways to do that here at INN. You've got that QR code down there. That will go toward the Jesse Jett Computer Fund. We've got a Patreon for monthly subscriptions, as well as Substack, where we publish our weekly update. There will be one going out on Friday. Rumble, where we have our video streaming when we're not censored by YouTube. Alternately, we also stream to Rumble, and they don't censor like YouTube does. And then, of course, if you want to get us cash right away, the easiest and best way to do that is via Cash App, $ Indie News Network, INDIE News Network. Really appreciate every. Well, that would be nice. Some money would be nice. We are totally user funded.
Money, please.
If you are unable, don't feel bad. Please enjoy the stream. Share the content. We are heavily suppressed across all social media. Basically, anybody I share it with, I DM it to will share it, and it doesn't go any further than that. It's incredibly frustrating. So we've got a couple of other, and now we get into the Twitter files again. And this is how they're kind of looking at the documents that came in from Elon Musk initially, but they've been basically sitting on them for a while they focused on other stuff. And we have another video here that's 1 minute. Let's take. All right. I guess they found a mistake.
We missed something in the Twitter files. In July of 2020, 130 major accounts were hacked at Twitter, including ones belonging to Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Elon Musk. To fix the problem, Twitter hired a famed ex-hacker turned cybersecurity expert named Peter Mudge Zatko, who in 1998 was part of a group that famously told the Senate that the internet could be conquered by hackers in 30 minutes. Zatko quickly hired a firm called Alethea to do sweeping audits. The contract for one included the name of singing censor Nina Jankowicz. The documents contained alarming proposals for new content suppression schemes. This week I'll be working with Michael Schellenberger and Alexander Gutentag at Public to publish new Twitter files reports, including never-released correspondence suggesting Zatko was fired for agreeing to, quote, provide information on Twitter to intelligence agencies. This is a deep rabbit hole with implications for the coming election. More on Public and Racket.
But his question is was Twitter set up by the intelligence agencies? A handful of documents casts the conquest of private platforms by security officials in a new light. Not only that, but the other question that we are going to ask through all this is, were the other social media companies similarly, did they have similar people sent into their organization to then hand over their private data to this Alethea company? So he says, from the first Twitter files reports, I worried about that the sheer quantity of material would cause us to miss something significant. We did. Racket Today is again teaming with Michael Schellenberger and Alexandra Gutentag at Public, this time on new Twitter files reports. On Public now, a feature called Twitter Files CIA has just gone live. Now, I am not a paid subscriber to Public. I'm not a fan of Michael Schellenberger personally, though he's done some good work. And I don't want to support his outlet. I think that he also is perfectly fine with some type of corporate funding as long as it doesn't demand that he censor. And I'm not fine with that. On Public now, a feature called Twitter Files CIA has just gone live. It is long, comprehensive, and full of explosive details missed during the initial Twitter files reporting. Michael and Alex did yeoman's work and were kind enough to let me contribute, but they found this mess in documents we had all along, but whose significance was realized only recently. Juicy. The broad story concerns efforts by intelligence agencies to infiltrate Twitter and other platforms. Other documents are relevant to efforts to deploy disturbing new offensive content manipulation schemes. Nina Jankowicz makes a cameo. While the first main features on public, Racket will be cranking out shorter reports beginning today, with each around an image or a handful of images capturing one angle of the story. And that's what this is. When Michael and I arrived at Twitter in late 2022, we remember we actually covered from the first Twitter files when Matt explains that he was flown to Twitter's offices and sat in that office, and they laid out the conditions of what would happen with Michael, Barry Weiss, and Matt, and how that would all go down, how they would be able to get the information and how it would be published and everything else, and it had to be put out on Twitter first. He said some of the first documents we saw involved a story already known to the public regarding the hiring of cybersecurity expert Peter Mudge Zatko, which we just saw in the video. As he says, after an ugly public security breach in which hackers compromised the accounts of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Elon Musk, and other celebrities, then CEO Jack Dorsey brought in Zatko, a veteran of Google, Stripe, and the Pentagon agency DARPA.
What?
Yep. Zatko was a former member of a hacker collective called L0PHT or LOFT that in 1998 told senators that hackers could take down the internet in 30 minutes, an episode enshrined in pop culture history via a Trivial Pursuit question. I don't know why he found it relevant to have to say that, but it's only because his name is interesting to say and most people won't know that off the top of their heads. It's got to be in the Genus edition, by the way. So here, where's his picture? It's funny. You know, this looks like the scientist, Brent Spiner's character in Independence Day with the long scraggly hair, right? Soon after arriving at Twitter, Zatko obtained...
This guy definitely has rolled for initiative multiple times.
Right?
Definitely has done that.
You don't think that they've had him crunching numbers for the NSA or the CIA for 30 years somewhere in some closet somewhere? Soon after arriving at Twitter, Zatko obtained seemingly unrestricted access to Twitter's internal documentation, as well as extensive information about the firm's procedures. Conspicuously, this included arrangements with federal enforcement agencies, which were strained at the time. Unbeknownst to outsiders, Twitter at the time had shut its doors, at least somewhat, to the intelligence community. At the tail end of 2019, Elvis Chan, a Twitter Files all-star, who became the chief FBI conduit to the firm, had emailed the Twitter executive saying, quote, "My colleagues at the fort had a query for you." The email referred to Fort Meade, which is the home of the NSA, and read, quote, "A few years ago, Twitter said they would no longer provide their data feed to members of the IC. My colleagues wanted to know if that policy had changed or you would be willing to change it." So wait a minute. In 2019, Twitter had turned off the API to all the intelligence agencies. Somehow it got turned back on. Right?
Oh, of course.
So what he says here is that the commercial version of the tool included the Twitter data feed. However, the feed was disabled because the vendor said they didn't want to violate their terms of service with Twitter. They're basically saying a government contractor that also has a commercial division is not doing business with Twitter's API because they don't want to violate their government contract. My colleagues are wondering if Twitter would be open to revising its terms of service to allow this vendor to continue having access to the Twitter feed. Revise your TOS for one vendor. My colleagues are happy to meet in person to discuss this issue with you if you'd like.
But it's in the vague of business. It's like, hey, you're missing out on profit. Like,
that's what they do.
You know, we have this vendor who would work with you, but they've also get some government funding. We know that that's an issue. You could, you know.
Yep. So, Twitter senior executives.
Look that up for us.
Yep. Twitter senior executives who'd had repeated strained communications with the Senate Intelligence Committee, the State Department, the FBI, and other agencies weren't sure if they wanted to expand information sharing agreements with the Fort. Trust and Safety Chief Yoel Roth, we know who he is very well. He's still in hiding, I believe, was reluctant. My sense is that a call directly with the IC on this isn't a great idea. Yeah, I think so, because Trust and Safety Chief should certainly be looking out for the data that the intel community is trying to penetrate. Director of Policy and future DOT Undersecretary under Pete Buttigieg, Carlos Manji, was concerned, however, quote, "We've seen a sustained, if uncoordinated effort by the IC to push us to share more information and change our API policies," he said back a few days on January 2nd, 2020. That's a year before January 6th. The hack took place 6 months later on July 15th, 2020. As one former Justice Department official told me, quote, "I doubt they'd send someone high profile in as a mole, but when Obama's account gets hacked, the government's at least going to have someone drive by the building." Zatko reportedly started work on November 19th, 2020. That's 5 months after the Twitter hack, where Obama's account was compromised. A month later, on December 29th, 2020, Yoel Roth explains to Zatko that for the last 2 years, we've also had a regular cadence of meetings with the FBI and Foreign Interference Task Force, that's the FITF, and fed FBI complaints to the firm's JIRA ticket system directly. There was no mention of either the My Friends at the Fort episode or the separate teleporter channel that Twitter opened with the FBI before the November election, although Roth did say that he hadn't made a comprehensive list of all of the inbound from the Bureau because there were so many different communications happening across so many different people, they couldn't even keep track of it all. This was in response to a letter from Zatko identifying Roth, former FBI General Counsel and Twitter Deputy GC Jim Baker, you remember him, Associate GC for Global Policy Stasia Cardile, and Associate GC for Global Law Enforcement Angelo Scherer as Twitter's points of contact for government information sharing. All of these people had former government clearance, and I believe they all used to work for the FBI. But Baker definitely did. In the letter, Zatko asked if there was any Google Drive folder, some emails, TLP style or whatever, or accounts to please provide me with access where appropriate where I can review. The new arrival wanted examples of what Twitter's communications with agencies like the FBI looked like. Unreal. Shown this email, one former military intelligence laughed and said that bringing in anyone with a hacking background and immediately giving him a global passkey showed the incompetence and lack of sophistication of Twitter. Yoel Roth got clowned. I said at one point, I said I almost felt bad for him because there was nothing he could do and he was way overmanned, overmatched, and they were going to take him down no matter what. But he was really bad for the job too. DARPA is able to compartmentalize these guys. That's why these programs all have compartmentalization, the analyst said. They put them in a dark room with a fucking candle and a pad and a fucking pencil and say, fucking fix it. What they don't do is give them access to everything else. What did they think was going to happen? What did happen? Zatko quickly commissioned a series of audits by an outside firm called Alethea with extensive political and intelligence connections. Its initial capital investment included $10 million led by Ted Schlein, who's a board member of the CIA's venture capital arm, In-Q-Tel. Alethea ended up doing 2 rounds of audits. The first was a review of Twitter's cybersecurity profile. The The second was a more retrospective analysis of failures leading to January 6th, featuring singing censor and former Disinformation Governance Board head Nina Jankowicz. Now that's interesting also because January 6th hadn't even happened when the hack had happened. When Mudge Zatko got there, J6 didn't happen until 2021. So they decided to include that too now? Jesus. There's the Alethea logo. When Twitter failed to adopt all of Alethea's recommendations, the situation became contentious very quickly. Do what we say or else. Zatko was terminated. Ready for this? Leading to settlement discussions in which his opening demand was $60 million. According to one Twitter attorney in the files. They eventually brokered a $7 million agreement that allowed Zatko to continue communicating with government investigators. He had then turned whistleblower and amid great fanfare testifying to the Senate that Twitter's cybersecurity failures would cause real harm to real people. And he got paid $7 million by Twitter to do it. This was in September 2022, months before Elon Musk took over and began releasing internal company correspondence. Some of the reporters brought in to do these releases were concerned about Zatko's claims about the sizable percentage of bots or monetizable daily active users. Again, look at what they in SOC fucking language, MDAU on the platform. Musk by then had brought a complaint against Twitter for misrepresenting the percentage of bots as less than 5% of accounts. Musk believed it was perhaps 10 times that number. Pundits worried Zatko's complaint would help Musk's legal case, and there were documents even in early Twitter files showing some pre-Musk executives suspected ties between the two. One Twitter attorney even announced in an email, "We'll be exploring the links in coordination between Musk and Zatko." Look, they're all connected to the intelligence community, so it wouldn't terribly surprise me. But why Jack would hire somebody who was secretly a mole working for Elon Musk who was about to buy the company and then whistleblow on it doesn't really make much sense to me, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. Concerned about any story that could be construed as favoring Elon, I was reluctant to spend any time on Zatko-related correspondence. This was a big mistake. Twitter, it seems, never found a link between Zatko and Musk. However, Schellenberger and Public found an internal chat involving a Twitter attorney making a more explosive claim. Quote, "Without the knowledge or support of management or the board, Twitter learned that Zatko had engaged with members of the U.S. intelligence agencies and sought to enter a formal agreement that would allow him to work with them and provide information to them. He was going to be a corporate spy or a government spy inside a corporation." Yeah. In another document, Twitter attorneys prepared talking points to present to the Department of Justice about Zatko, cataloging alleged performance issues he'd had. The document describes how Zatko became aware of a possible security issue with a Twitter employee's ties to China. Quote, "Zatko was aware of the issue, having learned about it separately through a contact at CIA." How could he do that if he's an independent Twitter employee? How does he have contacts at CIA and be talking about this shit? These two pieces of information look explosive on paper, but a larger story emerges in conjunction with the Alethea audits. These reports were written up by multiple publications but never fully released. They imply that Twitter couldn't handle security responsibilities and needed to build a broad knowledge management system based on partnerships with outside sources capable of providing threat intelligence feeds, like Hamilton 68 or like Alethea. Recommendations are made about draconian approaches to removing purveyors of disinformation about COVID-19 misinformation, safe and effective, QAnon, violent hate groups, and foreign government operated IO. That, by the way, what they're talking about there, foreign government operated IO, they're talking about Russia, China, and their intelligence operations and agencies, but they're also talking about WikiLeaks and the Gray Zone, who they are now starting to classify as non-hostile or as hostile non-state actors. There's no way to read these reports except as a forceful suggestion that Twitter expand the scope of its cooperation with federal enforcement agencies and with other platforms. An internal battle by Twitter lawyers to retain control via the attorney-client privilege of the Alethea documents showed they were concerned that the entire episode would be used to add pressure to the push described by Manji to share information with the IC. The back and forth of that entire battle is recounted in the public story, but I'll also drill down in the coming days. And I think we have another piece on that next. The emails dug up for this tale are in themselves not conclusive proof of anything, but show how deeply felt within Twitter was the pressure to expand sharing agreements with not just the FBI, but agencies like NSA. The strength of the report, put together on Public, and which I'll be recounting according to theme on Racket, is that many of the principals commented, in some cases at length, not just about the Zatko episode, but the larger issue of defense and intelligence agencies and contractors with ties to these bodies, pressuring platforms like Twitter to open their doors. Nina Jankowicz, with whom we had a spirited back and forth, Alethea CEO Lisa Kaplan, who I believe is one of the girl bosses that Ian had found, and In-Q-Tel board member and Alethea investor Ted Schlein all gave fascinating answers to questions about this episode. While Michael and Alexandra fleshed out how this whistleblower episode was used to further enmesh Twitter with intelligence agencies, I went back through the documents and attachments and cataloged the more bizarre material. Some of the Alethea audits piggyback on themes from the CTIL files story we did with Public last year, which we also covered here on How Do We Miss That, describing a volunteer censorship group promoting offensive tactics like creating sock puppet accounts and infiltrating private Facebook groups and Twitter DM threads. Topics you will read about. A detailed proposal in Alethea's audits for pre-platforming, or a form of digital pre-crime in which disfavored users would be cast into artificial environments or voids where online experiences would be synthesized. Real posts might be replaced by fake content like dog pictures, quinoa recipes, or sports scores. That's the article we're going to talk about. There's also a scope of work arrangement delineating eyebrow-raising pay arrangements for Nina Jankowicz and other characters. What a surprise that they all paid themselves out. The in-depth audit of Twitter's potential relationship to J6 undertaken by Jankowicz and other, which contradicts what nearly every analyst has said about that issue publicly, and evidence that other platforms already submitted to the Alethea-style recommendations that Twitter ultimately rejected. Meta definitely went along with it. They definitely bent over.
Yep.
There's a lot more in there, including, of all things, an exchange showing both Glenn Greenwald and myself were being monitored by an information security contractor. And evidence terms like #DrainTheSwamp were monitored as disinformation. All of this has to be understood as background to an already brewing fight over who will get to play internet gatekeeper in this election cycle and using what tools. It was public scoop, and I was fortunate enough to be asked to help out, so I recommend hopping over there to read the major feature, but you have to pay to do that. Racket will tackle the nooks and crannies beginning in the next hour. Up next, information voids. And I don't believe that that's the one that we're going to cover. We're going to talk about, that might be information voids. That's the one where they replace your timeline with posts unbeknownst to you when other people go to search your timeline. You see your posts. They do not.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of suppression and censorship, INN is heavily suppressed, as Reef loves to say on Friday night or on Wednesday night on INN News. Check out Reef and Colin on INN News Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, by the way.
Yeah.
In order to support independent media, you can donate to INN. There's that little QR code down in the bottom left corner right now that's showing to go to the Jett Computer Fund that is currently sitting at about $1,000. We're trying to raise it up to $2,000. We just reached 1,000 last night. Thank you so much to everybody who donated. If you can't donate, please like, share, sit back, enjoy the content, share it with everybody you know, and especially people that it would make mad. So I've got one, right? Again, Substack, Rumble, Cash App. You see all the other links and other ways to donate and support us. Also, sharing our YouTube videos, watching multiple YouTube videos will put more of them into your algorithm, and you'll see our content more and more. And of course, subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications if you can. Here's the final article I brought from that was paid. This is the fourth one. All right. And this also comes with another video. Hopefully it's not been removed. Nope. Here we go.
In 2021, Twitter hired a company with strong defense and intelligence connections called Alethea to give it advice on how to better moderate social media content. One of their ideas, pre-platforming, the digital version of pre-crime. Instead of waiting for someone to say a bad thing, Alethea proposed proactively identifying disinformation, manually or automatically preventing known disinformation threat actors from accessing the platform. If that's you and you squirm through anyway, Alethea repeatedly talked about putting you in artificial environments or voids where your interactions would be synthetic in all directions. They even talked about replacing your real content with, quote, dog pictures, quinoa recipes, and sports scores. Alethea described these tactics as adding cost to the adversary repeatedly described as you. Now, Twitter didn't bite that time, but there's evidence that other platforms are already using these tactics. Others are planning to ahead of the 2024 election. Not just removals or de-amplification, but generating fake content to slant public discussion, perhaps using AI. What might that look like? Stay tuned to Racket.News and Public.
By the way, this is Alex Jones ranting. It's an indie folk song. If you have never heard this, please go listen to it.
Shut up and show me the Earth, Wind, and Fire.
It's awesome.
Kiss mashup.
That's good. I was made for Boogie Wonderland. Nice. Okay. So getting back to the Matt article. All right. And now you've heard this replaced quinoa pictures and recipes. In the wake of the major hacking scandal in the summer of 2020, in which 130 high-profile accounts, including those belonging to Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Elon Musk, Twitter hired famed ex-hacker and cybersecurity expert Peter Mudge Zatko to address the problem, which we just talked about in the last article. In late December of 2020, Zatko asked Twitter employees for visibility into their security arrangements. By the day after the Capitol Hill riot, on January 7th, 2021, as reported in Public, Zatko recommended that Twitter hire an outside contractor the day after J6. Quote, I feel an external investigation may be quite valuable, he said in a Slack chat. I'd recommend Alethea Group for the disinformation angle. Who's Alethea? Alethea was an interesting choice. At the time, only just founded in 2019, some of the firm's initial capital came by way of a $10 million investment by Ballistic Ventures, led by Ted Schlein and Kevin Mandia. Schlein, a general partner at Kleiner Perkins, sat on the board of trustees of the CIA's venture capital arm, In-Q-Tel. Nothing to worry about there. When asked if In-Q-Tel funded Alethea Group, Schlein told Public, quote, this is a question either the company or In-Q-Tel should answer, not me. That really is encouraging. Alethea would go on to conduct 2 sets of audits for Twitter. The company fought hard to keep these reports private, but the authors and many journalists who saw them never released the full contents either. They're embarrassing to Twitter, but the contractor's recommendations for fixing the company's vulnerabilities are also unnerving, and in parts read like the stuff of science fiction. The first Alethea report, dated April 19, 2021, was a global assessment of Twitter's current capabilities to address the misinformation and disinformation threat, including its organization, resources, people, policy, and process. Remember, this is coming basically from the intel community. So what are they going to do? They're going to bully Twitter into accepting the recommendations here, right? They must adjust how existing elements within the organization are working together, invest in new capabilities and technologies, and standardize processes and policies to stay ahead of the adversary. As long as the adversary is actually them, I agree with it. But that's not what they're talking about. The second Alethea audit, conducted in August of that year, would be a cross-platform analysis looking at Twitter's recent history in an effort to better understand the broader social media ecosystem that led up to the U.S. Capitol attack on January 6th. Twitter signed off on a scope of work agreement that listed the future head of the ill-fated Disinformation Governance Board, Nina Jankowicz, as a senior member of the audit team. Red flag there. Jankowicz described her Alethea work to us very differently. The agreement also said the second report would be directed by Cindy Otis, author of, quote, True or False, a CIA Analyst's Guide to Spotting Fake News. Okay. So you brought in literally a CIA analyst to break this down and to provide its assessment. The first report, however, is the one that Twitter executives and attorneys seemed most anxious to keep secret. It identified Twitter as incompetent to manage its security vulnerabilities alone, even suggesting what capabilities it did have it owed to outside partners. In a particularly humiliating passage, Alethea claimed Twitter relied on the news media for awareness of threats and other problems. What? Quote, our current state assessment found that Twitter does not currently have a system in place to proactively track misinformation and disinformation threats. From our review, it appears that Twitter is largely only able to identify threats flagged through existing partnerships, outside assistance, or content going viral on its platform. That's what it should be doing, by the way. I'm going to stop right there and say that's what they should be doing. They should not be pre-criming and pre-gaming and pre-censoring to predetermine assessing threats. When Twitter executives read these and other passages, they feared its release would add to public pressure to place the company under stricter oversight, including by intelligence officials. True to form, when Zatko later became a public whistleblower, the reports would serve as the basis for a slew of damaging news articles. But again, the full texts were never made public. Why? One portion of the April report recalls why. Why? One portion of the April report recalls that the CTIL files story Racket worked on with Public last year, in which a volunteer team of censors instructed team members in the use of sock puppet accounts, infiltration, and other offensive techniques. I think Rene DeResta might have even been involved in that one, but no, that's a volunteer team. The CTIL volunteers were treated to a slideshow quoting a manual published by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, saying the goal was to impair the operational effectiveness of the enemy being people who use social media.
Why?
Right? The April Alethea report similarly contained a long section about increasing the cost to the adversary, as Matt mentioned, the adversary being Twitter users deemed threats or purveyors of disinformation. Removing content was useful, the analyst wrote, but there were opportunities to proactively identify disinformation content before it's seen. Basically replacing the gray zones text.
Yeah.
The section included a chart describing the process of pre-platforming, by which known disinformation threat actors, like our friend Kit Clarenberg, for example, would be removed in advance. But not only that, a knowledge management system described elsewhere in the report as something that would involve cross-platform analysis would track them after they were booted from the platform and feed preemptive strategies beyond Twitter, presumably to other data realms like Meta, for example, or Substack, or anyone else that would play ball in censoring, according to Alethea. The piece de resistance of the report, however, was a section describing how placing people in artificial environments or voids could even include techniques like replacing a user's real content with dog pictures, quinoa recipes, or sports scores, because everybody's looking for quinoa recipes. A human being had to come up with that idea. My guess is it was Renee DiResta or Kate Starbird. That is total speculation. I have no knowledge of that, but I would guess that my answer is probably correct. Right? Alethea, the report ties in with a long list of other stories we've done in the last year and a half, including the report worked on by the Aspen Institute's Commission on Disinformation Order. Garbage. One of the commission's key ideas, along with such concepts as a digital holding area for bad actors, was cross-platform capability, meaning efforts to build one database so that a person booted from one place couldn't just relocate to another. As the Aspen commissioners noted, this tactic was employed to great effect in the U.S. election. The example cited was the Election Integrity Partnership, an early prototype that encompassed at least 7 internet platforms and partnered openly with federal agencies like DHS and the State Department's Global Engagement Center. They really want to shut you down across all the platforms. And I remember this was floated at one point, that if you got booted from one platform, you'd be booted from all the platforms. More on this report and its similarity to proposals currently circulating in Washington soon. We need independent media more than ever, folks. Please support independent media. We have been suppressed like crazy. We just reached our first $1,000 goal to raise money to get Jett a new computer for American Tradition and to be able to produce better music. There will be other projects in the future that we want to raise money for. The best way to do that is to scan that QR code right there on screen if you have a phone, and it'll go to your Ko-fi. You can pay via PayPal or via credit card. Alternatively, you can subscribe monthly to our Patreon, to our Substack. You can donate either one time or monthly via Rumble. That's a video platform that's an alternate to YouTube. Or to get money into our hands right away, Cash App, $, Indie News Network, where they take 0 fees out. All right. I've got one other story that I wrote. I wrote it. So let's get to this one. Before we do, I want to go over here and hide my bookmarks bar. You'll be able to see more of the page. All right. And now let's go here. All righty then. I wrote an article because I saw this and I could not believe that nobody else had written about it. Jill Stein had posted it to her Twitter. Primo Radical had posted it to his Facebook, and that's where I got this image. We could talk about this image another time, but Robert Reich today posted an article that had this exact image, which we then found out came from Slate. I didn't know that, but I thought it came from Primo because he had altered it and added his own thing. What is this? DNC openly hiring third-party infiltrators targeting RFK Jr., Jill Stein, and Cornel West. What? Yes, specifically mentioning the 3 candidates they deem potential threats. They just don't care anymore who knows about it because guess what? There's no repercussions. So this was published on Memorial Day. So it's been a couple weeks since it was out. On Friday afternoon, May 24th, I saw a post on Facebook that blew my mind. By the way, this is published exclusively, not exclusively, but it's on IndieMediaToday.com. It's also on IndieNewsNetwork.substack.com. Those are the only two places you can find this article. On Friday afternoon, May 24th, I saw a post on Facebook that blew my mind. Posted by Indie Media Award honoree Primo Radical, containing a job listing for the Democratic National Committee, or DNC. The role is for an independent and third-party project manager, and it encompasses a lot of ground. He included 2 screenshots with details of the job posting, which has since been pulled down from their website. It was pulled down after a day. He also highlights certain things here. And then I actually listed out what all the key responsibilities are. Subverting democracy, be a snake. So here's the text from the listing in case you can't see the images, plus a couple of bullets from the original job posting not shown in his screen caps. I'm just going to cover a couple of the key bullets. That the third-party and independent project manager will be tasked with overseeing and managing third-party and independent related work in their respective states, as well as overseeing an aspect of the program. An aspect of the program, meaning it's a larger program. The initial phase of work, meaning there's more phases, will be focused on the following objectives. These are really important. Number 1, they want to gather on-the-ground intel to inform our overall landscape assessment of independent and third-party candidates, including, very importantly, ballot access progress, because they've spent a lot of time challenging that in the past, campaign activity, organizational strength, and voter grassroots enthusiasm, because they want to know how excited people are and how well organized they are. Identifying and activating in-state leaders and supporters for 4 current and future program priorities. What are those priorities? Volunteer trackers to attend candidate and campaign events. They want spies. Surrogates for earned media and bracketing events. They want this person to find mouthpieces. Volunteers for petition review and other legal adjacent support for potential ballot access challenges. They're already preparing to do it. Micro-influencers for content amplification through organic channels. We will get to this later. That is really critical. And then, of course, researching ballot access related info, participating in petition review and supporting petition review programs. The biggest thing, though, here is the responsibilities. What will you be doing in this role? You'll be following RFK Jr., Cornel West, and Jill Stein candidate events in your region and sharing intel in real time with the DNC. And you'll be building an army, recruiting volunteers to attend these events and report back. So you'll be creating a pyramid scheme of spies where you will be the chief spy.
Yeah.
Proactive outreach, right? So then they also want you to proactive outreach to in-state political contacts, such as party leadership, staff, and elected officials, and coalition partners for information on in-state activity. So everybody's in cahoots and collaborating. All right. Assist in ballot tracking access.
I was going to say it's probably someone, if they're following RFK, Cornell, and Jill, and have in-state political contacts. It might even people that are supposed to help you get ballot access and things like that.
Well, we'll look at that. We're going to ask that question a little bit, but you're delivering message guidance and managing DM and chat groups for content distribution. Again, the biggest thing is ballot access and spying. So I say that they're recruiting spies and infiltrators in plain sight. I said, I could not believe that the Dems would be so flagrant and dumb to advertise this on their own website. I jumped over to their website, looked up their current career opportunities, but of course didn't find it. It had indeed already been pulled down after one day. So I used the old Google machine to search the job title and found the post on LinkedIn, complete with the link to the DNC's LinkedIn page that has 47,000 followers. So I know it was legit because it linked to the DNC. It had to be posted by them. Use of the word intel twice in the first bullet of both sections tells you what they really want. Right? And there's a screen cap from LinkedIn. And there's a link to the LinkedIn post. I'm showing all the receipts here, folks. So, professional political spying, ballot access version. One of the tools the past few election cycles used by the Democrats to keep third-party and independent runs off the ballot is challenging the petitions and signatures that qualify them to be on the ballot. Where the Democrats intend to once again closely monitor the progress of obtaining ballot access for 2024 in states where third parties and independents still need to get onto a voting line. The goal is then to identify potential challenges the DNC can issue at the last minute to undermine their overall effectiveness, especially in swing states, and get those potential perceived spoilers off the ballot entirely. We saw successful Democratic challenges in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin over the past 4 years to disqualify Greens from the November 2020 ballot, and a failed bid to get Matthew Hoh thrown off the ballot in his Senate run for the Green Party in North Carolina in 2022. Greens will be on the presidential ballot in Wisconsin in 2024 for the first time since 2016, which is funny enough the last time Dr. Stein was the Green Party candidate. The Greens lost access in New York after 2020 and are still working to obtain and submit the necessary 45,000 signatures before the deadline to qualify to be on the ballot. They have, by the way, today is June 7th. They turned those in the other day. So they have now met that 45,000, but they fully expect every one of those to be challenged for signature match by the New York Democrats. So they're working to get double the number of signatures required to ensure that only even half of them will qualify. The DNC role calls for recruiting volunteer trackers to attend candidate and campaign events and to report back on campaign activity, plus also manage surrogates for earned media and bracketing events. The Democrats want this person to build an army of supporters to undermine the efforts of grassroots Americans to genuinely organize against the corporate duopoly. So, here's the other question, and this is speculation on my part, but 4D chess causing infighting and suspicion. Why would the DNC specifically mention the candidates they're targeting in the job posting? This is one of the things I couldn't understand. Why would you say who you're looking? Why don't you just say third party and independent? Right. Why do you have to mention the names? Well, let's think about it for a second. Here's one reason: to get everyone inside each of the named campaigns currently looking at each other sideways, plus make them highly suspicious and cautious of new volunteers and supporters as potential infiltrators. It also serves to allow campaign supporters to accuse legit independent critics of working for the DNC, as literally happened to me last week or 2 weeks ago. And there's an entire thread, but this person says, who's running this account at Indie Left News that is consistently trying to smear Dr. Jill Stein and Green Party? It's almost as if they're working for the DNC themselves. I've asked you a number of times, do you have the courage to debate me on this in real time? This guy works, he's just a Green Party fan. I'm not going to debate him. My answer is no, I'm not going to debate you. There's nothing to debate. I am team none of the above. And then here's somebody else saying, maybe they got one of those jobs to spy on the Greens. No, I'm just calling out the bullshit. And by the way, I'm exposing that the Greens are being spied on. Yeah. Dr. Stein knows it exists, but do the others?
You have no plan to deal with it.
Right? Dr. Stein posted it to her Twitter account an hour before Primo Radical shared it to his Facebook page, and she uses an opportunity to fundraise.
Yep.
Help us fight back and make sure we get on the New York ballot. Not they're corrupt. I mean, not we're fighting this system. No, it's just make sure we get on one ballot. Like, it's the ask is never big enough. I shared the link to the LinkedIn post in Dr. Stein's replies to the above tweet that evening, and I told her that the ad has been pulled down from the lever.co website, which is the employment hiring site for the DNC, but LinkedIn still has it, posted a day ago and no longer accepting applications after 6 submissions. I could not believe they actually had the gall to name the people they're trying to infiltrate. Why list the names? Weird. I hadn't really thought about it much then. Booby Kennedy certainly has been messed with by the DNC since he declared that he was running for president last year. They've continually denied him Secret Service protection. Look at him being shown as a spoiler candidate and fake protesters, being accused of fake protesters in Newsweek. They've been messing with him 100% to the point that he actually had to leave the party to run as an independent because he knew he was never going to get a fair shake there. Not a defender and not a fan of Booby Kennedy, but the Democrats did not run a fair primary. Now, what's really cool is the day that this was published, Lee Camp got a hold of it and he actually showed it to Dr. West. And Dr. West basically said, yeah, I know that they're trying to infiltrate. They're not going to be successful. Peter Dow.
Sure they aren't already have. Yeah, like exactly.
Micro influencers. Now remember above, one of the items listed in phase 1 of the job is micro influencers for content amplification through organic channels. What does that mean exactly? Well, Reef, you found this from Social Pilot, and this talks about the different sizes of influencers. So a micro influencer are individuals who typically have a following between 10,000 to 100,000 on a specific social media platform. It's not just about the followers. They are defined. They're defined by their niche expertise and the strong connection they share with their audience. All right. We've seen Gen Z influencers like Harry Sisson and Victor Shi and Chris Mowry amplifying DNC talking points on Twitter, paid for by a PR firm, Palette Management, to effectively co-manage their Twitter account. That tip, by the way, to INN's Robert Durden for digging on that. See below. They often post content very similar to each other, spaced out minutes apart to push a simultaneous narrative. Now, the reason why I brought this is to show that the DNC has already been hiring influencers. These aren't even micro influencers. These are at an even higher level. They have followings on Twitter of between 200 and 600,000 followers, or at least the last I checked. And here's Rob's receipts, where he grabbed a screen cap about Palette Media, claiming that they have been the agency of record for Biden for president. Okay. Then you have this guy, Juan Delgado, Burrito Hunting, who said that Axios made a mistake in reporting about unpaid pro-Dem TikTok influencers. It listed Harry Sisson as one of them, except this isn't true. His LinkedIn says that he worked for Palette, and Palette Media was paid $200,000 by the DNC around the time he was hired. And we've got that FEC filing with the $200,000 in this article too. But here is Rob showing that 15 minutes apart at 6:27 and 6:42, they write very similar messages with similar, it has similar messaging, but not identical. How is that happening? It's all coordinated. Here's the FEC filing for the DNC, proving that they hired Palette Management in October 22 for a $200,000 retainer to hire social media influencers. Durden started smelling a rat last August. He goes, you ever get that feeling of deja vu? As a casual user of Twitter, one gets used to seeing pro-establishment bots repeatedly recycling the same talking points. It comes with the territory if you follow American politics on social media. But if you look at these posts, they're from two very large accounts run by youngsters who seemingly only exist to boost Joe Biden and attack Donald Trump, and who we know are actually real people. She's been on Fox News, and Sisson has a podcast with fellow proud Biden-ling Chris Mowry. And upon inspecting some of their recent posts, you'll immediately notice what Rob noticed. The posts are nearly identical in verbiage, messaging, and drumroll. They were posted within minutes of each other. So these young Bidenites, gerontophilic propaganda op is so transparent. These posts are almost identical, both in verbiage and messaging, and came out within 7 minutes of each other, almost like they got a memo or something, using the same photo even. How about that? So we ask you, dear reader, what are the chances that these two had the same idea, organized in the same way, using similar verbiage at the same time? The correct answer is near zero, but for the people who'd say that maybe it was just a coincidence, have a look at some of the other posts these two put out recently. And that was in another article that we didn't include. But here's the one that came out 7 minutes apart, using the same picture, and even had similar formatting. Capital letters, the phrase "America is stronger" is parroted, and the quintessential Biden is cool, amazing rhetoric that one comes to expect from almost every post by either of these two is as omnipresent as ever. 2:53 and 3 o'clock on August 18th. The same thing. Damn and history. These two are so similar that an argument could be made that one was just copy-pasted from the other, or more likely they're getting these posts via some sort of memo sent to them by the same source at the DNC or their marketing firm. Here's another one 18 minutes apart, again using similar language, same picture. These young neolibs are basically just robots who get their programming directly from the DNC. And again, 5:29, 5:11 p.m., 18 minutes apart, talking about when Biden went and talked about how his kitchen almost got set on fire, right? So DNC goes next level. And this is what I mean by micro-influencers. This new role, advertised on May 23rd, 2024 by the DNC, appears to take their influencer strategy one level deeper in terms of overall follower count to hyper-targeted influential creators who have built a high trust factor with their audience, then attempt to align with them, outright advertise on their show and channel, or even pay them for support. From the Social Pilot linked article that had been linked above, quote, once you finalize the list of influencers, start reaching out to them. One good thing about micro-influencers is they're rarely accessible. You can begin by reaching out to them through the platform where they're active and popular. Micro-influencers remain active in their DMs and usually reply back promptly. And I'd say that that's pretty accurate. But one of the responsibilities of the independent and third-party project manager would be to identify and make deals with micro-influencers, so it's important to look at the landscape of independent channels that either push or go easy on Democrats who may be working with them. Don't dismiss the corporate-friendly, independent quote-unquote media like TYT, The Hills Rising, Breaking Points, and others in their universe. All would be potential targets, even though they have slightly larger follower counts. So what does this job pay? $65,000 a year.
Ain't bad.
Well, yeah, sort of. But for $65,000 a year, you too can cosplay spy and work to ensure the duopoly remain the only parties in power. Let's do it. How much does the job pay? Well, per the LinkedIn post, the starting salary is just $65,000 a year, according to It's Me Sarah P on Twitter. That's a supporter, now paid annual subscriber to IndieMediaToday.com. Thank you so much, Sarah. Of course, there's no guarantee of staying employed beyond early November, so a potential hire is looking at $5,400 a month for the next 5 months before taxes, of course. That's $22,000. Sell out your entire country for $22,000. Now, here's the question you talked about, Reef. What would someone doing this job look like? And I'm not going to speculate, but I want everyone to put in their minds and start putting a picture of what this person would look like and how they would act. Try to reverse engineer the profile of someone who would both apply for this job as well as be acceptable to the DNC as a hire. You would see them at campaign events. They would appear to be friendly to multiple parties' campaigns to gain access for some insider dish. They would be active online and well known in the independent media world, both the creators as well as watchers. Chatters can sometimes have a lot of influence over other viewers in a live stream. And we've actually seen at times where somebody who's taking over a chat can literally kill a chat and drive viewers away from the stream and from wanting to engage in chat. Now, here's the other big question I ask. Are there more roles like this? Maybe to infiltrate Republicans too? This discovery only serves to open even more questions. How many times has this been done in the past by the DNC? Because you know this isn't the first time they've done this. Are there currently employees of the DNC infiltrating their Republican opponents right now? My guess is yes. I'm guessing that the Republicans are also doing the same thing to the Democrats, hiring people to infiltrate and spy on the Democratic Party campaigns? I don't know. I'm guessing so. How much budget does an org that raised over $2 billion last presidential cycle commit to an operation to undermine their opponents? Now, technically, the Democrats themselves did not raise $2 billion. I know that. They have their super PACs and they have their private funding, and it wasn't all DNC money. But I'm talking about the money that actually supports Democrats, whether that is PAC money, super PAC money, or direct funding. We would also need to look a little closer at the DNC cutouts like law firm Perkins Coie and PR firms like Palette Management and the lobbying firms and the intel firms to see who they start working with if we can. And this is a question I probably should have asked very early on. Is this in any way illegal, what they're doing? Do the third party and independent campaigns have any kind of a case with the FEC against the Democrats for doing this? Thank you for reading. What do you think of all this? What do you think of all this, Kitty and Reef?
Yeah. What do you think of these? I mean, I feel like with this is just what is in the public. Is in the drunken public.
Yep.
You know, where it's like, what's going on that we don't see, right? What positions are being filled for all sorts of, like, infiltration like this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you just got to kind of keep your head on a swivel and be discerning and have a plan of, like, figuring out how to beat this infiltration. You know? Like,
I don't know how.
Concrete things in place.
Well, what do you put, like, run a test? What do you run a test? What do you put a test in front of some people and let them answer questions? How do you feel about XYZ? And let them answer on a range of issues? Wouldn't they be coached on that by the DNC, though?
Probably. I mean, I feel like there's, you know, background checks and stuff like that. Like,
I mean, we've seen alleged infiltrators into. Look, the People's Party had accusations of infiltration.
Yep.
The Green Party certainly has also had accusations of infiltration in the 2020 campaign. The neo-libs and Howie Hawkins took over and basically put a Russiagating big pharma agenda in place. Yeah. So, again, I hadn't really seen anybody else write this up. So, IndieMediaToday.com, please go there, share this article. I also published an article this morning about Stripe and Substack, and Stripe being the online exclusive payment processor for several sites, including Buy Me a Coffee, where I also have a thing hooked up. Locals, where a lot of creators also go. They are not exclusive, but they are a provider that works with Ko-fi as well. See the QR code for Ko-fi. So a lot of the creator economy is relying on Stripe for payouts. And if you are interested at all, go check out indiemediatoday.com and take a look at the Stripe Monopoly article that is up as well. Here you will be able to scroll down and look for original articles, and that plus an audio reading of this past article that we read and the original article itself are all there. And a lot of the other articles that I've written as originals, like the one about not getting fooled by Kyle Kulinski and Crystal Ball, and Chris Smalls blocking INN. We've got a whole story about that coming up, I'm guessing, this weekend. All right. We got through it. Woohoo! It was a long one. I warned you it would be a long one. Please keep supporting INN. Please keep supporting independent media. Once again, here are all of our supporters that we really love and appreciate. Grateful for all of them. Patreon.com/Indie News Network, indienewsnetwork.substack.com, rumble.com/C/Indie News Network, C being for channel, and Cash App, $Indie News Network are the best ways to donate and support. So I'm Indy, and I'm pretty spent, and I'm happy that we finally got through these stories, and I appreciate everybody bearing with us through the dropped streams and through the choppy internet, and hopefully you got some things out of these stories that you didn't know beforehand, and we're more aware of what Twitter is doing and what the intel communities are trying to do to us on social media. So for Kitty, that's Commander Geordie LaForge, by the way. I'm Indian. I always close every show by saying, look at him looking at us, giving us side eye. Support independent media, fam. We need it more than ever. I love you all, and I'll see you soon.
Keep listening to what little birds have to tell you. Good night, fam.
Mwah. Ciao, baby.
Who are these people?
TLAV, Indie Media Award honoree, The Last American Vagabond, is getting fucked with by Stripe right now. He got a letter about a week ago saying that Stripe will be closing out his account on June 10th. And what he received was that we're writing to let you know that your business is in violation of our Stripe services agreement. Specifically, you're accepting payments for crowdfunding as mentioned in our restricted businesses list. What? He's not a crowdfunder. All right. Here are the restricted businesses list. Now, also what's funny is they're also not permitting psychic services in Japan and Mexico. He's not doing that. He's not updating prohibitions in India. He's not based in India. All right. But they have given no explanation or answer as to why they're terminating this account. Ryan's been messed with. He got debanked by Patreon a year and a half ago. He got...
Show me the money!
He got knocked out by PayPal. So what they're doing... And
Show me the money!
Ryan is usually a canary in the coal mine with stuff. You know, when they go after TLAV, they're going to go after all of us. This gets me really worried that this is how they're going to stop creators from trying to monetize, is by not letting them have any type of online monetization capabilities. This will put him out of business. Now, on top of that, he's also been slapped with like a $12,000 fine or lawsuit that he's challenging over some copyright shit from 10 years ago. So I also wanted to jump in. First of all, underneath his tweet, I asked him to please post this on Substack notes and tag the creators and the founders of Substack, because they use Stripe exclusively for payouts, and they're using Stripe now to censor creators, or at least not stopping them, without offering an alternative solution.
Substack newsletter near you.
Yeah, those guys. So we don't want to be restricted. We want to be able to have an alternative. And if Stripe is not going to allow us to get paid out, well, then Substack needs to offer an alternative, or they're going to see TLAV leave for sure. Why would I go there if I'm not going to be able to monetize? So I also then try to tag and get some people excited, get them loud about this. It's not really working out well for me yet, but I need help doing this. Stripe is misclassifying them incorrectly as a crowdfunder. It is a user-funded media outlet like most independent media. Their readers and viewers and listeners can donate or subscribe monthly, same as most every other podcast and show. And I'm using the hashtag #LetTLAVBank. So this is messed up. They're debanking these guys. Please support independent media. We need it more than ever. Corporate media is shit, and independent media is the only one holding anyone accountable right now and calling it like it is.
Keep us to what little birds have to tell you. Good night, Sam.
Bye, Felicia. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
Who are these people?
Fucking lost the stream.